Hi, everybody. This is Jeremy Siskin. I'm here with my friend Haeyong Moon, who is making a film about Bud Powell.
Yes.
And so this is kind of a weird YouTube video for this channel, but I thought that a lot of you out there would be really interested to learn about the film, learn a little bit about Bud Powell, and hear more about what this experience is like digging into the life and art of one of our greatest jazz pianists of all time. So, I'm not sure where to start. Actually, I do know where to start. So, you're not a musician,
Nope.
and you're not really necessarily a jazz enthusiast. Like, you didn't grow up listening to jazz, or you did?
No. No.
But Bud Powell, I remember you telling me that there was something about Bud Powell that just captured you. So, what was your experience like being introduced to Bud Powell?
So thank you, first of all, for inviting me
Of course.
onto your YouTube channel. I'm very excited to meet everybody in this YouTube community. Yes, I didn't grow up listening to jazz. My parents were more into pop, classical music, so we had a lot of classical, recording collections in the home, always being played in the background. I didn't grow up playing real instrument. I mean, I took some piano lessons when I was young, but I was never good to really continue it. But it was in my college year, I think freshman year of my college year, my teacher in my film class played a recording of Charlie Parker. And that did it. That just kind of clicked in my head as that's the music I need to learn more of, because it just made sense in my head. And it was unlike anything that I've heard before, in the way the instruments were just expressing themselves, like exploding almost. I think that's what it was. I think it just felt so free in the way it was rhythmic and the way the melodies were happening. And it was just everywhere. It just filled my brain completely. And that was it. That summer, I went back home, and I went to the public library, and looked up Charlie Parker, and that's when I learned of the quintet at Massey Hall. That recording with Bud Powell, Max Roach, and then there was another an album of Bud Powell's, and I borrowed that, and that just and again, it was another level of, oh my God, I can't stop listening to it, and up to that point, I had some introduction to piano. Like I listened to it, with my dad, but also playing it. But I never really liked the way the piano really sounded. It just feels so contained and controlled. And there was this constant, like, you have to do it this way. And, you have to keep your hands like an egg, you're holding an egg. And I just didn't like that. But I think the way Bud played, and I didn't really see him play. There wasn't any video available at the time. But just hearing it, I could tell that he was just outside of that box that I thought pianist has to be in.
Wow.
And just listening to it. And I'm not a musician, like you said, and something about the way he expressed himself through his hands just spoke to me really deeply. And so I was 18, so it's been 20 plus years of listening and being a fan of his music. And then since YouTube, has a lot of videos of him performing. There are like a handful of them, and I see it, and it just still like really excites me a lot. Seeing him just be so smooth on that piano, and it's like effortless, But you close your eyes and you listen to it, and it's just perfect.
Yeah.
Perfection.
Yeah.
So
amazing. And so this has just been going through your head for the last 20 years, that you just are enamored with his music. And then was there something that made you think, so obviously you're a filmmaker, so that's the way that you express yourself, but was there a moment where you were like, I have to make this film? Was there something that pushed you towards that?
Bud Powell has always been one of my heroes as an artist. And in that short list of artists that I always name, there's a filmmaker, experimental filmmaker, and then Bud Powell. So it's kind of unique that I always have kept him in that list. Listening to his music, it's creatively satisfying, and I can't really explain it. It's just you just feel satisfied listening to the way he figures out, like the way his melodies are put together and the way his rhythm is put together. It's just so satisfying. And so I always knew that I wanted to do something for him. I was sad that he had such a short life.
Yeah.
He was 41 when he passed away.
Incredible.
And when I was actually thinking about my second film project, I had just turned 41. And so it was kind of a similar crossroad in a way. 2020 is also when the George Floyd incident happened. And, along with many people, I was very upset. And I didn't know what I could do, but like you said, as a filmmaker, you want to express yourself when you're in that moment of time where you feel like I need to do something, but I don't know how. And then this light bulb came off in my head of Bud Powell and the encounters that he had with the police in the 40s and 50s, and how that could have impacted the way his mental issues, continued onto his life, and the headaches and things like that. And so I think those were the two little things that kind of, yes, I was always a fan. I always knew I wanted to do something for him. And then in that moment in time in 2020, it just seemed like the right time for me to dig into this artist that I loved.
Right, it seemed especially relevant
yes.
in that moment.
Yes.
I've got more questions for you, but I want to make sure that we get out that you are in your last 2 weeks of doing a Kickstarter.
Yes.
To make sure that you get this movie finished and out there in the world.
Right.
So I'm going to make sure that I put a link to the Kickstarter in the description to the video. And you can get the screener to the DVD. You can get a copy of the DVD. So there's lots of great benefits for those of you who are interested in seeing this great film about Bud Powell. For people who don't know a lot about him, could you give like the very short? I'm sure you could give a very long biography. But if somebody out there maybe knows Bud Powell's music a little bit but doesn't know too much about his life, could you give the bite-sized version so that they just have some context in terms of what we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely give you a bite size because I'm not a historian, I'm not a biographer, but as a fan, he is known as the father of modern jazz piano. I mean, the way he plays his right hand and the way he, kind of clamps on the left, that's still the way a lot of jazz pianists play. And I know there was a tree that a big article or a publication created, and it's like the tree of jazz and how it comes from all these different people. And if you look at just the piano section of it, everybody goes through Bud. The stride pianist and everybody before him kind of goes through Bud, and then from there, like to Bill Evans and Herbie Hancock and all the big names that exist now for jazz piano, they all are influenced by Bud. And so to me, it's you ask anybody who is a jazz pianist and they all will know Bud Powell. The sad part of it is because he had such a short life and because he was relatively, his prime years were so short, not many people really talk about him, and so that's kind of why I want to make this film, just to preserve his legacy for, the next 100 years. We just celebrated his centennial birthday, so if he was alive, he would have been 100 this year, 2024, in September. So, yeah. I mean, another big highlight of his life, I guess, is his close relationship with Thelonious Monk. Monk and him, they were very, very close. Monk was 7 years older than Bud, but they met each other when Bud was young, and he really took Bud like his protege, kind of, and he took him to his shows, and he would ask Bud to play for the last set, and he really recognized Bud as somebody who was so outstanding, and so I think that says a lot too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you, being somebody who wasn't in the jazz world, set out to make a documentary about Bud Powell. What were your first steps? Because now I have a little bit of insider information because I've known you throughout this process a little bit, and now I feel like you know more about the jazz world than I do. You've really found a lot of people who want to talk, and you've gotten to know them and their music and their worlds. But where did you start when you set out to do this?
Okay, so how I started, that's a great question. So when I first decided that, okay, yes, Haeyong, you're going to make a film about Bud Powell. That's your next project.
Yeah.
When I set that out in my head, what do we all do when we just start our research? You go to Google and you type in Bud Powell. That's literally what I did, my first step. And the first result that I got was budpowell.com and budpowelljazz.com. These are two websites. So I clicked on it, and it was like a website about Bud Powell, his life, his music, his, there's some photographs of his, various years. And so it felt like a genuine website made by a jazz fan. And fortunately, there was an email in that website in the fine print, and I emailed this person, and they wrote back probably the next day. And this person, he's a 80-year-old, jazz fan in Maine. So I'm in Los Angeles. He's all the way in Maine, Portland, Maine. Mm-hmm. And he emailed me, and we had a back and forth. And he was excited to meet somebody who was, interested in Bud in that way. Because I had told him I'm thinking about making a film about him. And he was ecstatic. And so this was still during the pandemic. So we got on a Zoom call. And I think we did a couple of Zoom calls. And at the end of the second one, he said, I would like you to take over the budpowell.com website. And he had also collected a lot of jazz, rare recordings of Bud Powell's over the years, because he had been a fan for like 30, 40 years, and so he actually gave that over to me. So that was my first step. Amazing. It was a great first step. Yeah.
Okay. And then how did you end up getting connected to this web of musicians? Because, in the documentary, I'm trying to think, I know that you interviewed Thelonious Monk's son, T.S. Monk. Who are some of the other highlight musicians that you made it to?
Kenny Barron was my last. Incredible. Yeah, Kenny Barron. I interviewed him in February of this year. He was great. Jason Moran, pianist in New York. Chuck Israels, the bassist, who was one of the bassists for Bill Evans' trio. Roy McCurdy, the drummer who played with Cannonball Adderley.
And so how did you go about finding your way to who was your first musician contact?
Oh my God.
You don't even remember?
Well, I can say that with jazz, I mean, even the way you and I are here now, jazz is such it's a unifier. One of the people that I interviewed actually described jazz as a passport. Like that it allows you to travel to various places.
Yeah.
And I also want to add to that, jazz allows me to connect with people in a very quick way. As soon as they know that you're a genuine jazz fan, they welcome you, they accept you, and they're like, oh, you have to meet this person, you have to meet this person. Yeah. And so how did I get to T.S. Monk? That's kind of how it happened. I got introduced to a jazz pianist in New York, and he said, you got to talk to Earl John Powell, the son of Bud. And then one thing led to another, and Bud's son, John, he connected me to T.S. Monk, Renee McLean, who's the son of Jackie McLean.
Wow.
I mean, and then it just kind of spread, and now I have 40 plus musicians and historians that I've interviewed for this project. I'm at the tail end, so I'm now editing, and that's why I'm doing the Kickstarter and trying to raise some funds for the finishing. But yeah, honestly, I'm also surprised because this project is just me. It's an independent project. There's no studio behind me. It's just me using my vacation time, because I have a full-time job. I use my vacation time to travel to New York, to Oregon, to wherever to interview these people. And so it's been really gratifying to be able to meet these people and record them, and they're so welcoming, and they're happy to share their love for Bud, because that's kind of what this project is. I'm trying to capture the love people have for Bud Powell, and it's a tribute to him, it's a love letter to him, and hopefully people will realize what an amazing musician this was.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think is cool about the jazz community, is that there's a level of celebrity that some people have in the jazz community, but still a jazz celebrity is just like a normal person in the world. Like jazz celebrities might not be very wealthy. Yep. They might not be, some of them don't have gigs for whatever reason. Yep. It's not like being a celebrity where everybody wants a piece of you. It's this really minor level of celebrity. So when people come around and they want to talk to you for a film, and and they want to talk about one of your favorite artists. It's I think a lot of people, I'm guessing that you found, have just been very receptive. That's how I met my mentor. Is like I just found his email on the bottom of the website and emailed him a question, and he emailed me back and invited me to like take a lesson with him. And it's like, oh yeah, like to me this person was up on this high pedestal, but actually he's just kind of a guy. And it's kind of strange about the jazz community, but it's kind of wonderful.
It is.
Because everybody's accessible, even if they're at this really high altitude in the community.
Yeah. I mean, Kenny Barron, for instance, I met him for like a 20-minute interview in San Francisco in his hotel, because he was doing a show in San Francisco, and he was so approachable and kind and so willing to talk. And he was so humble too. He kept on saying, "I'm not good with words," but I'm like, "You're saying it. Why are you saying that?" He was like, "No, it's hard to explain." And he would just say, and he would just say, "I'm not really good with words." I'm like, "No, but you're already saying it." Yeah. But I think jazz musicians, I think you're right. Like, there is this. I think we know, or people who really love jazz. There's a sense of. We're talking about genuine things, and I think maybe that's why it's so easy to like talk to each other when as soon as you know that they're a jazz fan, because something just opens up.
You got to be in it for the right reasons. Yeah,
you're not doing it for money.
You're truly not.
Nobody does jazz for money, and I'm the same way with my filmmaking. I'm not doing this for money. I do it because I love it. I do it because it's meaningful. I think it's meaningful for people, gives us joy. It improves our daily like emotions. I mean, what's better than that? You can't put a dollar amount on that.
With that in mind, make sure that you donate to Haeyong's Kickstarter so that we can all see this documentary, which it just sounds like you have fascinating interviews, and there's going to be some of that footage of him playing, and maybe some of the rare recordings. We're going to be able to hear all that interspersed.
Right. I'm trying very carefully to interweave the materials, because of licensing. Licensed music could have a cost. Right. So I'm trying to be creative in the way I use his music or represent his music. And even the footage, and not a lot of the footage that I found were really that great, because it's old. It's 16, it's film footage. Yeah. It's not really it doesn't look great, but there are a couple that I do plan to use, and then photographs that I've gathered over the years of him in various different jazz venues. And I'm also working with a couple of animators to kind of make it visually interesting.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah, because jazz to me is such a visual medium. Even though it's music, it's sonic. I feel like it's one of the, maybe that's why I love it so much, because I feel like jazz is definitely something that strikes or triggers my visual sensibility in addition to the sonic. And so I plan to work with a couple of animators to kind of visualize maybe something literal, like Bud's hands moving, or just the emotions of how jazz makes you feel. Yeah. So that's going to be part of that too.
Great. I'm so excited to see it all come together. I think we all, as part of the jazz community and jazz piano community, owe you a debt of gratitude. We're all benefiting so much from this project that you've taken on.
Oh,
so
thank you.
So thank you. All right. So Kickstarter, donate.
Yes.
You can visit budpowell.com, which you have taken over. And there'll be some information about Bud and about the documentary there as well.
Yeah, you can go to budpowell.com, and there's a link on the bottom that takes you directly to the Kickstarter if you want to go there. The Bud Powell website also has some historical information about him and his life, and when he was born in 24, 30s, 40s, 50s, and the 60s, when he passed away in 60, so check out that space as well. There's also links to various YouTube videos that I've found over the years, some links to biographies written about Bud, and then the Kickstarter page has a lot of my updates that I've been doing and sharing since mid-September. So I went to New York to celebrate Bud's centennial, end of September. So you'll see some of the photos and people I've met. There's some videos that I recorded at jazz venues in New York, really great ones that I posted on Kickstarter. So there's a lot of things on the web space, so please check it out. And if you do feel motivated and if you feel excited about it, I'd love for you to support it. It helps, anything helps. So thank you.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. All right. See y'all later.